Hello, my friend Rodney Walker here with Grant Central USA. Another wonderful day to get a chance to talk about grant writing. And today I'm going to be sharing with you some information that's going to help you to know what is nonprofit grant writing. Yes, we're going to learn about this interesting area that a lot of grant writing takes place in. And I want to help you today to be able to distinguish between the other types of grant writing that there is. I want to bring some more clarity to this issue so that you will be able to hit the ground running and write some winning grant proposals that can get funded for your nonprofit organization. Now, you may be brand new to nonprofit and you also may be new to grant writing. And it's important that you get a good understanding of both. I'm going to take a few minutes just to explain it. And then I also want to share with you some other areas that people tend to write grants in. Now, let me start off first by sharing with you the area that grants are written in the least for, okay? Because you may be wondering about this whole grant thing, maybe with everything that's going on with COVID, maybe you've heard a lot of things about grants. So I want to explain the three different key areas that a lot of grants are written in. Now, this first one, though, is the least. Okay, the least amount of grants are given out in this area, and that's in the area of individual grants. Okay, the least amount is given out in this area as it relates to most grant funding. Now, I want to clarify that because when I say the least, I'm talking about the time when most grant writers are applying for grants. There are very few grants typically for individuals. But there's a little caveat that I want to bring into this equation because on one end, that's true. But on another end, there are these grants known as, can you guess? Yes, scholarships. Okay. So those typically don't require a grant writer to have to go and apply for a scholarship. So that's a whole nother category. But on the surface level, most grants are not written for individuals. Now, let me say this. With everything that took place with COVID, there was a rise in the amount of individual grants that have been written out because the government started allocating money for a lot of businesses to help them to secure funding to keep their business going. So they had a lot of business stimulus packages that were released to help keep things moving. But in the normal world, when things are back to norm, you'll notice that that's probably going to level back out again. Now, the other area is government grants, okay? When I say government grants, typically nonprofit organizations are one category. We have individuals, but we also have governmental agencies that are applying for grants. So there are a number of grant writers that actually either work on a contracted basis or they're hired by those agencies to pursue grants. And they may work at the governmental level. For instance, they may work for a state or a county and start applying for those county grants. Or you may have it set where the entity is not technically a 501c3 nonprofit, but they are a nonprofit in nature. And I'm going to explain in just a second the whole essence of nonprofit so we can bring a little bit more clarity to this area. But we have some people that are working for entities that are like governmental entities in a sense. For example, public schools. Okay, they are not necessarily they don't exist in most cases to bring in a profit. In fact, none of the public schools do. Now, the private schools they do, but on the public side of things, that's more of a governmental entity. And so you have people that are writing grants for those agencies, either in-house or out-house, doing it as a contractor. Okay, now let's go to this third area because we have individual grants. We have that second category I told you about, which was, you remember, that second category was those governmental agencies that are applying for grants. This third area is the nonprofit grants. Okay, so with these nonprofit grants, it's important for us to note what this nonprofit grant writing is. It's literally grant writing for an agency that is a nonprofit entity. Now, what is a nonprofit? I know you may be scratching your head and say, Rodney, what's a nonprofit? Well, it's kind of like what it says. It's an entity or an organization that exists to fulfill its mission. It does not exist for a profit. Okay. So that first category I tell you about, those individuals, that individual may have a business, and that may be a for-profit entity. So that may be a different type of grant writing that takes place for those entities. But the nonprofit, that entity literally exists not for profit. Okay. They exist to fulfill its mission. That's why nonprofits will typically have a mission statement, which says, this is what we are all about. So here's what's going to be really important for you. If you are looking to do more effective grant writing for nonprofits, I'm going to encourage you to do two things. One, we've got to learn about First, we got to learn about nonprofits. You've got to get a greater understanding of what is a nonprofit, how does a nonprofit exist, what do they do, what's the structure. There are a number of things that I think would be very important for you to know if you're going to be doing nonprofit grant writing. You got to understand how their programs work. You also will need to know, what are the typical roles? What do these roles do? For instance, let me give you an example. Typically, a nonprofit is going to have an executive director. That would be kind of like the equivalent of almost a president or executive, the top level person with any other type of corporate organization. You also typically have like directors. You typically have like program directors, or maybe program coordinators. So these are roles that are important for you to know, because when you're applying for grants, you're going to have to describe things. And oftentimes these roles come up again and again. And you've got to understand and have a understanding of how these nonprofits function, so that when you're applying for a grant for a nonprofit, that you can do it with a sense of intelligence and make sure that you're doing things right. Okay. So one end, if you're going to do this, learn about nonprofit, make an investment into learning about them. The second thing that I would really encourage you to do, if you're seriously interested in doing grant writing, is for nonprofits, you got to know grant writing. Okay, so we got to marry these two together. We got to bring nonprofit and grant writing, and they got to get married. So you've got to know how to do grant writing. There's a number of different ways that you can learn grant writing. We have trainings and courses over at grantcentralusa.com that you can learn. We have workshops and all types of things to help you. A membership program. That's one way. So you can learn online, but you want to learn the grant writing. And let me just share with you the areas that you want to make sure that you cover. You want to make sure that you learn about where the funding opportunities exist for nonprofits. There are resources that you can go to that will show you all the funding opportunities. Now, there are other entities for government opportunities, but there are special places that you can go to locate grants for nonprofits. And when I say a nonprofit, let me clarify for just a few more minutes, because I only have a limited amount of time today to share this information with you. But most nonprofits are 501c3 nonprofits. And it's important for you to know that those are the ones that get the lion's share of the grants given to them. The other ones are nonprofits, but they don't have a 501c3 status. Now, you may be scratching your head and saying, Rodney, what is all this 123, 50C, 2B3? What's all this stuff you're talking about? Okay, so if you don't know about that, my friend, that's where I really want to encourage you to go and start learning about 501c3s and what that means, because you need to know that while you're applying, because most grants that are given out to nonprofits are given out to 501c3 nonprofit organizations. And if you don't have one, what's going to happen is you will be overlooked, because most of the grants are not going to be given out to you if you don't have that status. So that's something that's going to be worth taking a note of and learning about. I'm going to give you in just one quick minute, a quick overview. And then later on, if you feel like this is something that you want to go deeper on, I want to invite you to go over to grantcentralusa.com and look at our area where we have our GFIC, our Get Funded in a Circle, where in those groups, we go into much greater detail in our membership area than I have time to go through right now. But let me tell you this in short. A 501c3 is a status that you receive as a entity that has applied to be considered a nonprofit organization in the eyes of the government. Okay, so the government, they will assess, and you have to fill out an application, the 1023 application. You have to fill this application out. You have to pay some money. And then there's certain questions that they're going to ask you to make sure that you really are existing, not to make a profit. Now, that doesn't mean that money doesn't come in, but your reason for existing does not depend on you making a profit. You, as an organization, you better make some money if you want to exist. We want you to exist, but we want to make sure that the government wants to make sure that you are existing to fulfill a mission. And then they give certain breaks and all that stuff. Okay, that's more time than I have to go into it right now. But hopefully that has given you an understanding, a better understanding of nonprofits, and also the importance of what you got to start doing to start getting ready for grant writing. Now, if you found this information helpful, I'm going to encourage you right now, just hit that like button. And if you haven't subscribed yet, my friend, what are you waiting for? Go ahead and subscribe, and then hit the notification bell so that you can get notifications as soon as I release content. This entire month, I'm going live every single day to bring some valuable information to you to help you to go about getting funded. I want to see you win. And I'm hoping that you are grabbing bits and pieces of information here and taking that information and applying that information. You see, what we don't want to do is this. We don't want to just get information and let it sit like a book on the shelf that's collecting dust and not being read. We want to take the information and start acting upon the information. And when we do so, you'll find that you will begin to grow in this area. And then when you take action, like I'm encouraging you to do, you will find that before you know it, you, my friend, have been funded. You'll be writing. I got funded. I'll be sending you a congratulations on getting funded. So go right now over to Grant Central USA. Look for the link that says coaching. Learn about some of our programs that we have, and then take advantage of them and start the learning. You may want to take a look at that Gold membership plan. There's some videos on that page that tell you all about it so you can learn more. Look forward to seeing you real soon, my friend. All the best. And remember, be brave, be bold, be brilliant, and always take charge. Goodbye.